I'm Link.
And I'm Nervous. Don't reduce me to a theological footnote. Jesus was as real to me as he possibly could be without physically manifesting himself in my presence. I have always been a naturally skeptical person. So even in the midst of a very vibrant Christian faith, I would have doubts. I would think a little bit about the resurrection of Jesus and I'd be like, that's a tough thing.
Greetings, I am Doug Beaumont. Welcome to my channel that is all about Christian apologetics, theology, and philosophy. If you're into that kind of stuff, click on subscribe, click that bell notification so you know when new videos drop. And if this video turns out to be helpful to you, I'd appreciate it if you give it a like. Today I want to talk to you about something that is kind of going around the internet right now, and that is the deconstruction of Rhett and Link's Christian faith. So in case you don't know, Rhett and Link are some YouTube internet sensations that got into the game really early on. They're a couple of very funny guys. They've done some great work. They've got numerous channels, just one of which has close to 15 million subscribers. Now, sometime in the early part of 2020, they released a series of videos where they went over what they called their lost years and talked about the fact that they had been missionaries, working with Campus Crusade for Christ in college and after. Rhett and Link were never really ministry entertainers. They were entertainers who happened to be Christians. And then they released a series of videos called the Deconstructions, which is where each one of them explained their reasons for losing their faith in Christianity. Now, it's not very often that just a couple of goofball YouTube guys catch the attention of Christian scholars, but in this case, we have an interesting problem. You see, because Rhett and Link were Christians at the beginning, they garnered a lot of Christian followers, but they shed that whole Christian entertainer thing and have a gigantic audience now, many of whom are not Christian, or even if they are Christian, they don't maybe necessarily know a whole lot about the kinds of things that Rhett and Link are talking about in these deconstruction videos. Now, there have been responses from different quarters. Obviously, a lot of people who knew that Rhett and Link were Christians or just found out are upset because here are these two guys telling 15 million people the reasons why they are no longer Christians. Now, Link's deconstruction video was a little bit more on the experiential side.
You didn't cry, thank you.
I didn't cry.
But Rhett actually quotes a number of sources. He goes through a lot of intellectual arguments. I mean, he really comes across as someone who has done his homework and has really proven, at least to himself, that Christianity is a no-go. And the reason that I think it's important for Christian intellectuals to stand up and talk about this is that the kind of purchase that Rhett and Link are going to get out of these videos might be kind of out of step with how good their material really is. You see, they're very likable guys, and they're very smart guys. Both of them were engineers before they went into Christian ministry. So they're not stupid. That doesn't mean they haven't made some mistakes, though. And because of their potentially undue influence, I think it's important that they be answered. Now, in this video, I am not going to go step by step through the arguments and show why they are false. In fact, I'm not even really that concerned with whether or not some of them are right or wrong. Rather, what I want to talk about are some more basic mistakes that I see Rhett and Link making as they go through their search for the truth. I want to talk about those elements rather than the individual things that might have bothered them. Now, there is a lot of material in these series of videos.
This is not going to be as detailed as some of you might want it to be, and it's going to be more detailed than some of you want it to be.
I've watched the relevant ones, and I think that I have distilled the major arguments down fairly. If you go to douglasbeaumont.com, I have a 3-part series on this that goes into a little bit more detail than I'm going to go into here, and also contains links to all of the resources that Rhett and Link mention, as well as a bunch that I personally recommend. So if you really want to do a deep dive after watching this video, head on over to my website. For this video, I'm going to concentrate on 3 major areas: Rhett and Link's rejection of the Old Testament, their rejection of the New Testament, including Jesus and the resurrection, and their rejection of Christian morality. And the reason that I am splitting it up into those three things is that they really came at these three different areas in kind of three different ways, each of them having their own strengths and weaknesses, and I just want to be fair and present those, and then talk about some of the missteps that I think they made. Alright, so let's begin with the Old Testament, because this is where Rhett especially spends the lion's share of his time. To kind of set the stage, we need to understand that Rhett and Link both had a fundamentalist, Baptist, evangelical background, and for those who aren't totally sure what that means, those three words can kind of be synonymous, especially in the South, in like North Carolina, where Rhett and Link did their growing up in the faith. Baptists can be a really wide range of different beliefs. There are super liberal Baptists. Typically, the really right-wing Baptists are known as fundamentalists. But for people who aren't comfortable with the term fundamentalist, but still kind of have a lot of the same beliefs, they typically refer to themselves as evangelicals.
Come on, you're not fooling anybody. This means you're a Baptist church with a cool website. That's all. Probably have a cool Christian coffee house at your church.
Fundamentalist, Baptist, evangelical, I'm going to use those terms together here, usually means that they are very conservative biblically and they are very conservative morally. However, a lot of the things that distinguish the fundamentalist type version of Baptist Christianity from others is their view of the book of Genesis. You see, in the first couple of chapters of the book of Genesis, the story is told of God's creation of the universe and the planet Earth. And famously, it is told in a series of 6 days, leading to the idea that God created the earth in a single week. Now, if you have any familiarity with pretty much any kind of science that touches on age of the universe, age of the earth, you know that this flies in the face of basically all of them. In some fundamentalist Baptist circles, the age of the earth is actually clocked in at somewhere around 6,000 to 10,000 years old. Not million, not billion, 1,000 years old. So not only does this young earth view see God as creating the entire cosmos in 6 literal 24-hour days, but those 6 literal 24-hour days only happened about 6,000 to 10,000 years ago. Now the old earth model basically sees creation the same way that most scientists do. Believes that God created the heavens and the earth, just as the Bible says, but as far as how he did it, or how long he took to do it, or how long ago he did it, those questions are left kind of up in the air for the scientists to figure out. Genesis is seen as kind of a more poetic description of God's preparation of the earth for the creation of humans, rather than a scientific statement on exactly how long it took. Now, there are biblical arguments on both sides of the equation, and right now I am not interested in trying to resolve those. It's also important to realize that both sides have existed for millennia. St. Augustine, clear back in the 4th century, noted that people had differing opinions on whether or not Genesis was describing a literal creation. So the belief in old earth is not some liberal Protestant escape hatch to get away from the embarrassing science. It's also not just Christians rolling over because science tells them differently than the Bible does. In fact, the majority of Christians today actually believe in an old earth. The Big Bang Theory itself was first suggested by a Catholic priest. So while Einstein was busy fudging his equations to try to make it look like the universe had always existed, a Catholic priest had worked out that the universe had to have a beginning in time. So while all Christians believe that God created the heavens and the earth, Genesis 1:1, not all Christians agree on what the rest of the chapter is describing. Is it describing 6 literal 24-hour days, or is it talking about something else? Now that dovetails nicely into the other major creation issue, which is the theory of evolution. Although most Christians did not object to the theory of evolution when it first was suggested, and even though most Christians today don't have a problem with the theory of evolution, the fundamentalist Baptists who believe in a young earth say, well, it couldn't have happened because, of course, there wasn't enough time. And even if there was enough time, there are certain problems with the evolutionary theory because what happened to Adam and Eve? The important thing for most Christians is that God created humanity. And the thing that makes a human is not just the body, which could come from anywhere, but the soul. It's the soul, the part that gives us our intellect and our free will. That can't be explained away by evolution. So regardless of what process was used to prepare human bodies, the first humans were only the ones that God placed a rational soul into. So regardless of how close we are physically to some other animal, it's our rational soul that truly distinguishes us from the other animals. It's not what's in our DNA. Well, here's the problem. Rhett and Link grew up with a very particular view of Christianity.
A young earth creationist. So this is someone who believes that the book of Genesis is literal history, and that the implication from that is that the world is between 6,000 and 10,000 years old. That's when this whole thing began.
They were taught a young earth interpretation of Genesis. They were taught to deny evolution. And so when Rhett started to discover that science was pretty much 100% solidly on the side of an old earth cosmology, and that most scientists, even a bunch of Christians, believed in evolution, it really threw him for a loop.
When I looked into this, I basically learned that no matter what scientific discipline you start from, the evidence points overwhelmingly to a world that is very old, billions of years old, to be specific.
When he came to believe that evolution was true, which he actually learned from a scientist who was a Christian, by the way, it kind of just destroyed his faith in the book of Genesis. And moreover, it started to destroy his faith in the people that had taught him that evolution was false.
I had placed a lot of faith, not just in God, but in these people who helped me understand why I believed what I believed from an intellectual standpoint, right? I had a very real, emotional, personal, spiritual relationship with God that I was practicing. But there was this intellectual foundation that I would, whenever I had a doubt, I would kind of retreat to this intellectual foundation. And all of a sudden, those people I'd been trusting in, I began to doubt that I had been shown the truth or told the truth about other things.
Even though he learned his old earth view of the cosmos from another Christian, it made him doubt the book of Genesis. It made him doubt the people that had taught him that the earth was young. And this was a pretty serious blow to his faith. Now, the rest of the Old Testament kind of fell when he looked into archaeology and some of the apparently horrible things that God allowed to happen or even commanded to happen. And so it wasn't long before he lost his faith in the Old Testament. Now, Rhett goes through his issues with the New Testament much more quickly. In fact, to the best of my knowledge, he doesn't even give really a single example of a problem in the New Testament. He simply refers to the fact that there are problems in the New Testament, and if you just go read Bart Ehrman, you will see what they are. Now, Bart Ehrman is a skeptical New Testament scholar. He is an ex-evangelical or ex-fundamentalist himself, and he has gotten quite famous writing lots and lots of books calling the Gospels and other parts of the New Testament into question. Now, Rhett wasn't just reading skeptics. He lists some Christians that he read in response to people like Bart Ehrman, people like Josh McDowell, people like Lee Strobel. And so the listener who is unaware of who these people are, get the picture that Rhett really did his homework, that he did his due diligence, read both sides, and fell on the side of Bart Ehrman and the skeptics. And he concludes his section on the New Testament by basically just saying, well, the resurrection seems like a problem, and I came to believe it was just rhetorical. And then finally, when it comes to Christian morality, Rhett and Link both were quite clear that they had a serious problem with the fact that women were not typically allowed to rise to the highest levels of church hierarchy, and they didn't believe that the church was right in not allowing homosexuals to get married and in teaching that homosexual activity itself is a sin. So I'd like to respond to each of these three things. First of all, when it comes to the Old Testament, it is very important to realize that Rhett and Link's understanding of the book of Genesis is kind of a niche market in Christianity. As far as historical Christianity and modern day Christianity goes, the idea that Genesis may not be teaching a literal 24-hour day creation 6,000 to 10,000 years ago is not unusual. And the same thing goes with evolution. Although all Christians believe that it is God who creates the soul, who creates what is to become a human being, how exactly the bodies that he put that soul into came to be is sometimes left up for grabs. Did God make the first male out of dirt and then make the first female out of the rib of the male? Or is this another poetic description of God's preparation of the earth for humans? That is a live question, and faithful, scholarly Christians are on both sides of that debate. So the important thing here to note is that Rhett and Link's initial skepticism of the Old Testament came from views that are almost fringe today. Right or wrong, the idea that the earth is young and evolution didn't occur is in the minority, even in the Christian church. So at this point, Rhett and Link really have no reason whatsoever to doubt Christianity, although they may have reason to doubt fundamentalist Baptist evangelical theology. And that's only if evolution and old earth are actually true. Again, that's not something I'm going to argue for or against right now. Turning to the New Testament, we have even bigger problems. Unlike evolution or old earth, which really have nothing to do with the veracity of Christianity, the claims of the New Testament, specifically about Jesus Christ and his resurrection, these are the sine qua non of Christianity. Without the resurrection, you don't have Christianity. Read 1 Corinthians 15, 1-5. Listen to the sermons in the book of Acts. It's all about the resurrection of Jesus. What's odd is that when Rhett and Link turn from issues that really have no impact whatsoever on historic Christianity to issues that have the ultimate impact on historic Christianity, they just kind of hand wave it away. Oh, go read Bart Ehrman. And their reason for trusting Bart Ehrman is apparently because he wasn't answered by Josh McDowell or Lee Strobel. Now, for those of you that don't know these names, I've already told you a bit about Bart Ehrman. Let me tell you about Josh McDowell and Lee Strobel. Both of these gentlemen basically got famous by taking the work of other people and repackaging it in a popular format. Josh McDowell made it really big with books like Evidence That Demands a Verdict, which is essentially an outline of arguments for Christianity. Now, Lee Strobel is a journalist. In fact, he's the one that broke the story on Pintos exploding if you run into him from behind. He wrote a book called The Case for Christ, which again took scholarly material, repackaged it in a popular format, and now he's a big-time apologist. Neither one of these guys are scholars. Neither one of them have a PhD. And yet Rhett is putting them on the other side of the scale from someone like Bart Ehrman, who is a legitimate scholar in his field. So even though they sound like they've done a lot of research, the fact of the matter is, they just really are not comparing apples with apples. If you're going to bring up Bart Ehrman, you better bring up Michael Licona. If you're going to go after the resurrection, you better bring up Gary Habermas or N.T. Wright. You need to read the real guys that write 700-page books on these topics, not guys who write 200-page books popularizing a million arguments from all over the place. And then finally, when it comes to morality, there is more than one source of an ethical code for Christians. First of all, there is Scripture, the Ten Commandments, the Beatitudes, different lists of rules or teachings that tell people how to live their life. But on the other hand, the Bible teaches that there is also what we call natural law. Read Romans chapter 2. The idea here is that there is just something about reality that conditions our souls to be able to tell right from wrong, at least at a basic level. Now here's the thing. You look back in human history, although there has always been homosexual activity, it is really only in our day that it just became this widespread, politically correct acceptance, especially with the idea of gay marriage. So when Christians oppose homosexual activity, they're not just doing it because of some Old Testament law. This is part of a fundamental philosophical view of morality. But Rhett and Link don't give any arguments whatsoever for the propriety of homosexual activity. They simply state it as if it's self-obvious that it's a good thing, and the church just needs to get with the times. And so at the end of the day, after hours and hours and hours of video, what we basically have are good reasons to doubt things that don't really matter, and anywhere from bad reasons to no reasons to doubt things that do matter. But because all of this is intermingled, and Rhett and Link are just such personable guys, it's hard to see through all of this. If someone hasn't spent a lot of time in the apologetic world, they're just not going to catch these things. And my fear is that what's going to happen is that a lot of people who are maybe kind of looking for a way out anyway are going to look at Rhett and Link's testimony as authoritative. Oh, these guys used to be engineers, they were Christians for years and years and years, and then they read some books and now they aren't. For a lot of people, that's all they need to hear. Take it from a guy in the know, okay? I know Lee Strobel. I know Josh McDowell. I have spoken with these guys at conferences, by which I mean I've been a speaker and they have been a speaker at conferences. I have a master's degree in apologetics from Norm Geisler's seminary, and anyone that is into Christian apologetics will know who he is. I have a PhD in theology. I've published books both as an evangelical and as a Catholic. I've been around the block a few times with this, and I just want to say what Rhett and Link have done is expose some good reasons to doubt their fundamentalist Baptist evangelical background. Some of the things they were taught seem to be false based on the good work that they have done. However, when it comes to things that really matter to universal historic Christianity, the due diligence is simply not there. They've pitted legitimate scholars working in their fields against popularizers, and they've basically pitted their own personal feelings against objective morality. So if you know somebody that is struggling with their faith, or maybe they watch these videos and now they're really starting to get concerned about their Christianity, I would strongly suggest that you explain these things to them. Again, go to my website, douglasbeaumont.com, have a look at the more detailed responses. And then if you really want to dive in, I've linked to every single source that I could find in Rhett and Link's videos. I've also given you a bunch of other ones that you should look at. I mean, believe me, you could spend years looking into this. And to be perfectly honest, for someone that has been a Christian their whole life and is now doubting, they should spend a few years. It took me 5 years of full-time study just to move from evangelical to Catholic. If you're going to go from evangelical to agnostic, atheist, nothing, whatever, you owe it to yourself and to those around you to put the time in to learn the real sources and make sure you really know what you're doing. Because let's face it, if Christianity is true and hell is real, and you reject God and you reject Christianity, and you end up there, at least have a good reason for it. I hope this video has been helpful to you. If it has, would you mind giving it a like? And again, if you are into Christian apologetics, theology, philosophy, if you would subscribe to the channel, that would be great. Click that bell notification or else you won't get any notifications when new videos drop. But until next time, I am Doug Beaumont. God bless.